Hi everyone, this is Hero from the Birds, back with another Shadowlands video. And in this video, I'd like to take a look at a new Holy Paladin build that is a bit of a variation on the Light of Martyr gameplay that I featured in our raid testing. Specifically, I think when I was talking about the legendary Marauds. This was brought to my attention by a Holy Paladin in the community named Nyx. We had a very fruitful discussion about a simple idea. What if we moved our main beacon off of the tank and onto us and leveraged the throughput of Light of the Martyr to play that old battle style paladin that sacrifices his own life or her own life to save all of her friends. And that's what we're featuring here today on this Spires of Ascension 4. The reason I did it as a 4, well, the reason I brought this video to your attention is actually for a few reasons that'll come out a little bit later, having to do with dealing with pugs and what kinds of extra utility that you can offer as a Holy Paladin, specifically interrupting when your group forgets or decides not to, using all the tools available from your Covenant, in this case, Venthir's interruptibility, the Door of Shadows, and just some of the shenanigans that happen when you're with people who you have basically no communication with. You'll see that running in the background, and while that's in the background going on, and I'll come back to it from time to time, I just want to talk to you a little bit about what the stakes are for this sort of a build, what you can expect, and what I found just kind of doing a really scuffed version of it. We'll do some more discussion of the talents that I see going forward a little bit later at the end of the video, but for now, what is the basic idea here? Well, the main theory of Holy Paladin is that beacon must always be on the tank. And that has been something that has never been challenged or discussed really. The merits of it are, on plain sight, pretty straightforward. The tank takes the majority of the damage in a dungeon. They're the ones that get hit by all the mobs for melee. They also absorb a lot of punishment from area effects or direct magical assaults. So it makes sense that any of the passive healing that you are going to do, or any of the healing that you do to other members in your group, should naturally top off the tank as well where possible. This has been something that is a staple of anybody's comments for new players, new Holy Paladins. Always put your beacon on the tank. It's going to do a ton of passive healing for you throughout the dungeon. And that's true. And I'm not trying to advocate for some other thing in this video. I just want to show you what Nyx was talking about in our conversation about the utility of putting the beacon on yourself as a healer. And that comes down to one of the simple facts about beacon on the tank and the playstyle that we normally experience with our Glimmer of Light melee paladin. We still directly heal the tank a great deal. We cast many Word of Glories and Holy Shocks, sometimes Flash of Lights, into the tank. This is because the same really real reason why people tend to think Glimmer beacon is good on the tank. The tank takes a crap load of damage. And I think you'll find if you look at your healing charts of any given dungeon, how many casts that you produce that go onto the tank directly is pretty astounding. And this is normal. All the other healing classes do this as well. What makes this build somewhat interesting is we're going to leverage the untempered dedication conduit, which gives us a stacking buff that you can see rolling along on the left of my character. It's at 5 stacks right now. Those stacking buffs improve every time I cast Light of the Martyr, and it makes my Light of the Martyr hit that much harder as a heal. At 5 stacks, it's significantly better than a Holy Shock that doesn't crit. So Martyr hits for like 6k or something like that. Holy Shock hits for, I guess, maybe 3 or 4. Obviously, Holy Shock can crit, and I would always encourage you to press Holy Shock as much as you possibly can. But with your 5 stacks of Untempered Dedication at, like, say, 200 eye level of it, it does a ton of throughput healing. And the idea Nyx had was, well, let's just use this. Maybe we'll use it with Marauders, kind of check that out too. But let's just use this basic idea of leading with Martyr on the tank as a heal, and then doing your kind of normal rotational stuff like Holy Shocks, Crusader Strikes, Judgment, that kind of stuff. But always have your Martyr be the first thing you press on your tank. Whenever you are topped off as a healer, make sure you're martyring your tank, because it's a great throughput button to press, especially when we stack up untempered. And you can always top yourself off. The tank's the one that you're going to be casting most of your abilities on, so why not just make use of Martyr? Here we have an example of one of the best things about pugs in the Spires, by the way, is we don't interrupt the Goliaths, and we pull extra adds down, or we don't deal with them at the same time. This is just one of those lovely moments where I realized I'm going to have to put a little bit more attention into the utility side. And to encourage you guys, actually Holy Paladin has quite a few tools. Not only do we have our single target stun, but we have Door of Shadows to do a disorient. We have Shining Light to do a disorient. These are all excellent things that we can add value. So maybe I could have saved the group in this instance, and I did not do so. But I think the lack of interrupts is going to be a significant part of your own experience. You can see here, I think I Door of Shadows right now to interrupt some of their casts, the Insidious Venom. But it will be a very significant part of your gameplay in lower Mythic Pluses, where people are not really attending to things. They just are trying to pump through the dungeon, and they don't really care about interrupting anything. If this continues on, obviously you'll never really get a serious group to complete Mythic Pluses. You have to interrupt. Even all of these Dark Lashes and Infernal Strikes going off, I think only one of them was interrupted in that entire moment. Anyways, use your Door of Shadows. Look, I have it up again. I have it available to cast on somebody. I could just press it. It's a 1-minute CD, guys. That's an AoE interrupt. Just use it liberally in your dungeons. Not only that, it can get you into a new position if you're out of place. Other people have commented on its usefulness in lots of different dungeons. But back to this Martyr idea. So that's the essence of it, is keep the beacon on yourself as much as you can. If things are really crazy, you can always move your beacon around, of course, to the tank if it's necessary. But in general, there's not a great deal of extra value to be gained from leaving beacon on your tank if you're going to be spending many global cooldowns healing the tank directly. Tanks have a lot of their own self-healing in Shadowlands. They don't actually need as much attention as we perhaps think they do, especially Blood DKs, Guardian Druids, Protection Paladins to some degree, and the most important tank, I think, for Mythic Plus, the one that gets used in the highest keys, obviously Demon Hunter Vengeance, Demon Hunter tanks. They do a significant amount of their own self-healing, and they can take care of themselves a great deal. But when we are attending to them, it's largely by healing them directly. So if we lean into Martyr, and really all we're leaning into at this point is the Conduit, Untempered Dedication, we can expect that our meaty single target instant cast heal that we can use anywhere while we're doing anything is going to significantly improve the next global cooldown, the life of our tank or somebody else in our group. And if we're dying, or if it's a serious problem, we can always just bubble and blanket Martyrs and other instant cast abilities on the rest of the group and use the rest of our Word of Glories and tools to help top people off. This is, I think, an improvement in general on the basic Glimmer of Light gameplay, which we must sort of support by usually taking advantage of Holy Avenger or by taking advantage of the Kyrian Divine Toll. Without those tools, you tend to run into serious problems whenever there's a lot of danger, because we don't have really meaty instant cast abilities outside of our Word of Glory. Holy Shock is good too, but even Holy Shock doesn't have a really amazing spell power coefficient. Martyrs at 5 stacks, guys, is a really, really solid spell to cast. And this is just, goes to show you in some ways another style that you can make use of. And the way to really make it work productively, I think, is to follow in Nyx's idea here and think about using Beacon on yourself. Back to the conversation that we're having on the side about pugs, we run into a bit of a problem here where our pug tank at least tries to get a little bit cute, and we try to, I don't know if this is an MDI strat that is trying to be deployed here by these two, but it's pretty clear to me that not everybody is on the same page. His hope is that we will avoid aggroing these guys here, the elites, and only deal with the non-elites. And of course, I think the Warlock or somebody else, the DK maybe, decided that we need the percentage, or maybe he misunderstood the motion that the tank was making. In any case, we just ran in and did this whoopsie. Now, that's not a problem. This happens all the time, especially in lower keys, I'll be honest, guys. In pugs, it's a mess. But my advice to you guys from a healer's perspective on pugging is try to keep things as simple as you can as far as your approach to a given dungeon. Even if it's going to take you a few seconds longer, trying to be really cute and hop over walls and, polymorph certain things and get out of combat with night elf abilities and all that kind of stuff really is never worth it. It only takes a few more seconds to kill the mobs. Your route, generally speaking, should incorporate a tiny bit of excess as far as the percentage required to complete the dungeon is concerned. If you have a strategy that is straightforward, everybody in your pug can buy into it and understand. It's not that big of a deal. Look, that didn't take very long at all. Maybe 30 seconds total. And I know, like, if you're really shoving a really high key, oh man, it's horrible, 30 seconds, blah, blah, blah. But there's no reason for this player to be trying to yell at the tank and say, you're doing it wrong, man. We were supposed to do this other thing. When in fact, it just causes far more trouble when people don't know what's going on. Back to Martyr here. You can see here we're making fairly good use of it. Across this encounter, you're just trying to smooth the health bars of everybody as you go. It's, again, your kind of standard spot healing idea. You can add damage with this without any sort of significant problem. And I haven't even really started to talk too much about legendaries. Before I do that, I just want to mention another way in which pugs are something you have to watch out for. I get a little bit tilted here because our tank decides to pull the boss into this corner, I suppose anticipating that we are going to drop the orbs in all kinds of locations, and he wants to start in one area and move kind of around. But I'm trying to let him know, look, one of the massive damage abilities of our entire group has just been completely eliminated because you decided to move him. So on my side, I can obviously wait until he's positioned him in a certain location. Just another thing to be aware of, guys, for the use of things like Ashen Hallow, it doesn't actually take a ton of communication. You just have to say, hey, we're using Ashen Hallow now, or, wait until the tank goes, or if you're in a raid setting and you need to set these things up with your group, it doesn't take that much effort. Just say, look, I have Ashen Hallow, it's basically Tranquility, where do you want me to put it? It lasts for 30 seconds. Oh, okay, well, we'll swap it out with Healing Tide Totem for this part of the encounter, and off we go. Everyone just make sure you stack on this part over here, or if you're already stacking, just tell them where. That's about the extent of the special use of Ashen Hallow that you need to incorporate, guys. You can make it a little more fancy if you want, but on the whole, it's just a super strong ability, and we saw there in a pug scenario, often it gets messed up. So one other thing I want to close with about this build to talk to you about is the efficiency with which I am performing it in this current dungeon. And I want to relay very clearly that I am not doing the best version of this as far as gameplay is concerned. Obviously, it's yet another way of thinking about organizing your muscle memory, thinking about your gameplay strategy. It's not entirely unique compared to the normal Crusaders might build, but when you're throwing a more meaty Martyr around, it is going to affect the way you think about your gameplay. When your beacon is on yourself and not the tank, it's also going to alter that a little bit. So this is by no means the best version of this. It's also why I'm showing you a +4. I'll run this in some higher stuff and get you guys some footage of it so you can see how it can perform in a bigger key. But in general, I see a lot of potential for this build. Specifically, I don't think it necessarily competes as much as offers you another option for thinking about how to play Holy Paladin. You're looking at a build that is going to give you that same style of saving people's life and allow you to lean a little bit more heavily on your own health pool and not be as worried, because you have another spot healing tool at your disposal that isn't too problematic. Overall, it's really enjoyable. It feels pretty free. You can move all over the place. You can weave your way in and out of combat. You don't have to worry at all about instant cast abilities. You can do it much better than what I've done here by making sure you're regulating your Holy Shock and Crusader Strike CDs. Obviously, I was just kind of giving it a first whirl so that I can see firsthand what I like about this. And yeah, I just want to say thanks to Nyx for taking the time to take a look at this build. And as we close here, I want to just show you some of the talent options that I see for this build. Specifically, we started out with Crusader's Might. You can play a full Glimmer of Light build alongside this. And I was also using Judgment of Light instead of Saved by the Light and Holy Prism. But I also think that you could value Beacon of Faith and play this build with a beacon on yourself and the tank so that your attention is directed to either side of the DPS first. So you can use your Light of Martyrs to top the tank for a bit. Your first Word of Glory and Holy Shock can go into an injured party member or yourself, and you know that whether you're casting on yourself or on the tank, that there's going to be value going back and forth between the beacon. There's not going to be a lot of overhealing, that kind of a thing. Obviously, Unbreakable Spirit is really strong with any kind of Light of the Martyr build because you have your personal DR back more often, etc., etc. You could make use of Holy Avenger as you normally would in a dungeon setting, and I think, generally speaking, Divine Purpose and Awakening are also kind of fine, though with the Glimmer of Light build, Sanctified Wrath's value goes up a lot more, especially if you're playing Venthyr and you want to frame your wings usage for very specific moments. This is, I think, pretty important, especially on tyrannical weeks, but in general, if you're doing very high keys, Sanctified Wrath is likely going to get you more value because you'll have far more uptime on Holy Shock, and you'll just have a stronger CD to work with whenever you need your your Avenging Wrath. So Awakening is okay, but in dungeons it loses some value because of the fact that you just get random wings and it might be at the end of a fight, so it's not that big of a deal. As far as our covenants are concerned, I think this is pretty flexible. You can play this with any single one of them. Obviously, Kyrian in dungeons always has that nice get out of jail free moment. So if you're playing Glimmer of Light, Kyrian is going to be much stronger for you because the other covenants are going to definitely have to lean on Virtue in higher keys to make it through without incident. Not totally, but often I think Virtue is a way to help save really tough groups or tough tyrannicals. If you're playing Venthyr, as I am here, obviously you have access to an AoE interrupt on your Door of Shadows, which is just extra useful. You also have way more damage, so you could do Mad Paragon if you like to link that up and just do tons and tons of damage alongside your Glimmer of Light build. Necrolord gets some value. I don't recommend pairing this with Marauds, which Necrolord might lean you toward. Instead, I would say if you're going to play Necrolord, then Divine Purpose Awakening is going to be far more valuable for you over the course of a dungeon. Just that much more of a chance to proc off of your Vanquisher's Hammer. And it's also nice because one of the things that makes Necrolord interesting for a Martyr build is you always have self-damage on yourself, and you tend to be smoothing out the health bars a little more consistently than the topping off of people. So you will martyr somebody to get them to like 80% health. If you Vanquisher'd Hammer, you're holding your buff, you're martyr. Now everyone has about like around 60 or 70% health. You press your Word of Glory and you heal yourself significantly with that Light of Dawn as well. So I think Necrolord has a lot to say in dungeons when you're using this kind of a build alongside Divine Purpose and Awakening. Obviously, Night Fae is something we don't talk a lot about yet, in part because I haven't got around to doing thorough testing on it. I'm doing my own raid duties that I have aligned myself with Venthyr for specific reasons, and I won't probably get to Night Fae for a little while. But you can think about how Martyr works with Night Fae just probably as the least desirable option overall. As far as legendaries are concerned, Shockbearer, in my opinion, gets the most value out of all of the legendaries from a pure throughput perspective. This obviously doesn't change from our normal Glimmer build, but what I think is interesting here is that it's going to get even more value on yourself because you're chewing through those shields very efficiently. You're going to get some value out of Mad Paragon if you're Venthyr and you want to push damage. You're likely not going to get the value you want out of Maraude, so I would steer clear of that. In a dungeon setting, you end up killing yourself, which I've done a few times, and it has not been very pleasant. Others, you know, you can pretty much take any other legendary you like. It'll be subpar to, like Shadowbreaker, I think will be subpar to Shock Barrier in a dungeon setting. And then conduits, one thing that this also plays into is shielding words. So if you have access to both shielding words and this untempered dedication conduit, it will provide a ton of value since you're just leaning on those shielding words buffs on yourself. It'll prevent the damage that you're doing from Martyr. Overall, guys, this is just a kind of first look. I want to just test out all the different kinds of builds that people are bringing to bear. I want to say thank you to Nyx for his delightful conversation about this build, and I want to apologize for doing it so poorly. But in general, I thought it was something just worth showing you guys so that you have an example of a slightly different way to play Holy Paladin, one where you toss the beacon on yourself and play Savior. If you guys enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, or if you have ideas for your own styles of playing Holy Paladin that you don't think have been featured yet, I'd like to hear about it. The goal of this channel is really to showcase all kinds of the stuff that people have either not tested or think is garbage and maybe don't know how to make it work. And I'm here to sort of test it out, give you some feedback, and show you what tools are available. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you again next time.